Signs of the Southland for December 16th, 2024. Kurt Hoyt is joining us today to talk a little women's basketball and volleyball season wrap up. Kurt, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. How are you all doing? Getting ready for the holidays to really hit in force, right? Last week of work for everybody.
Last week of
I,
work,
I have a
last week
lonely
and last
Monday
couple.
before I'm off, but in spirit, I'm there. How's that?
There you go.
Yeah.
Last week of
Yes.
work, last week of athletic events, right? I think we don't have anything scheduled for next week. I have to check the calendar.
Yeah,
This is great podcasting, Shirley.
Yeah. Um,
probably not until a day or two after Christmas.
Well, we
yeah.
know 2 days after
Like the
Christmas
bowl
we got
game
something.
is
Yeah, we know we
the
got
is
that.
the Friday after, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. The bowl game is on the 27th. Women's basketball plays again on the 29th. And while we're talking about women's basketball, the newly minted number 17 team in the nation, Georgia Tech women's basketball team. Let's start there. Two wins this week, one at home, a 60-point thumping of Louisiana Monroe, and what started out as a really raucous game versus UNC that ended up being a margin that is quite slimmer than I expected it to be, an 82 to 76 victory. Georgia Tech women's basketball has posted its best start in program history at 11
Hmm.
and 0.
Yep.
Kurt, we were talking about this a little. I kind of hinted at this before we started recording. It is the best start in program history by wins
Yes.
alone, but beyond the record, how unprecedented is the type of performance they're putting out? Because some of these opponents that they beat on the road to 11 and 0 are, I mean, like some pretty dang good basketball teams along the way.
Yeah, the 11 and 0 historically has been hard to get to because in many seasons we have Georgia among that 11, and it took quite a while before we would ever beat Georgia. And so now that, we're thanks to partly to Nell lately, at least we're beating Georgia a little more regularly. That makes it a little easier to get to the 11 and 0, but at the same time the schedule that they're playing is actually a really nice schedule this year,
Yeah.
and scheduling is kind of an art in these things, right? Because you need a certain number of games that you're like, oh yeah, we're going to win that one, right? Because it's like we want practice, and the school you may be bringing in is thinking, oh, I'll get a few dollars if I come play there, right? And
Yeah.
their job's to come and lose, and sometimes once in a while they don't, and that's usually disappointing, and maybe they don't get invited back again. Who knows? But you also want a set of teams that are going to challenge you, right? And maybe even possibly teams that you can lose to or can beat you, like Oregon, right? Like Georgia, though Georgia not quite as good this year as I think as I thought they might be, but certainly North Carolina and this past weekend, and South Dakota State's not a bad
Yeah.
program either. And so they did a pretty good job of the non-conference scheduling, because you come out of a pretty tough ACC matchup on the road, and you got Rice and Nebraska coming up, which at home, which they're not cupcakes, right? And so
Yeah.
the team is the coaches have done a really good job scheduling, and that's why I say it's kind of an art, because you're trying to figure out, of the teams that want to play you or whoever you want to play, what are they going to, you don't always know what they're going to be like, and you want to be
Yeah.
able to ramp yourself up for conference play, and start a
Yeah.
little simpler and have things get a little tougher and tougher as you're heading into conference play, as we'll see, finishing up with Rice and Nebraska in that non-conference slate. And so you want to put yourself in a position where you're ready for conference play, but you haven't gotten yourself beat up. And if you're 11 and 0, that's icing on the cake. I think the
Yeah.
big deal with the 11 and 0 is not some is in addition to the winning, it's the scoring, right? This
Right.
team is
Yeah.
averaging 82 points a game, and that's historically that's not where Georgia Tech women's basketball plays, right? We've
Yeah.
had multiple seasons where we're trying to play games either in the 50s or the 60s, maybe the 70s. But Coach Fortner has said over and over again, she wants to push pace, push pace,
Yeah.
push pace. And she has certainly done that. And this team will push pace. They really do. They like to get out and rebound and run, inbound the ball and run. They want to go quick. They have a great feel of where everyone else is on the floor. If you've seen a few, surprise baseball passes down the court, it's like, wait, where did she come from? And they all
Right.
knew
Yep.
that she was down there, and it's an easy fast break layup. So I think the 82 points per game is probably another thing that sort of raises the eyebrows when you look at it. And I don't know if it'll be 82 still by the end of the season. But we'll see how it goes. But right now they're working very well offensively. They're doing really well defensively. If there's I don't want to call it concern or any little bit of worry, is that they have seemed to get tired in the fourth quarter in a few games. And I think that's partly what got them at North Carolina, is they maybe, ran out of gas a little bit. But that'll all work itself out. And you never know whether or not somebody, the team kind of relaxed a little bit, thinking we're up by more than 20 going into the fourth quarter. Earlier in the season against other opponents, it's like, yeah, let's cruise. Let's cruise our way to victory. And you can't do that in Carmichael, because North Carolina, they're not going to give up on you. And they had a fantastic fourth quarter after they had a really bad third quarter. And we had a great third quarter, and that was what won the game for us.
And I think it's worth reiterating just before we get in more deep into this season, is you talk about push pace, and it's something that Jack in his interviews with some of the team that he's been able to grab has emphasized that offensive transition. And I've been thinking the last couple of days, it really shows how good of a coach Nell is, that she, with a roster she didn't recruit, that was very defensive oriented, not pushing pace really at all, those lower scoring lineups, the success that they did wind up having in the front end before we get to the, now it's a full recruiting cycle in there. So just there's something I've been dwelling on as an additional appreciation to how they've come out of the gate so far this year.
And to go back on your schedule point, like, they also got a nice narrative game with Mississippi State, which wasn't a guarantee with the SEC challenge. Like, that could have been any number of those teams, and it was like, okay, we get a clear point to show how much better we've gotten against the same team that wiped the floor against Tech at the end of last season. And it was a very battly kind of game. We still scored a lot of points in that same fashion, and did really well. To your point of scoring, we're 24th in scoring offense right now. Duke is right behind us. We have to play. And there's 4 or 5 other ranked teams we still have to get past, including this weekend against Nebraska too. So it's like they have conquered the tests ahead of that they've had, that they could plan out at least. And now it's like, okay, it seems like they have the firepower to at least get themselves in good positions down the line if they're going to keep playing offense like this continually, even when there's tape on them now is a thing. Like, North Carolina had tape on us, and this still happened, which is crazy. Like, that was a 23-point game, and we were like, okay, now we're gonna milk clock as much as possible in this fourth quarter. At one point, we had like a 50-second possession, which doesn't equate to how you, like, I think about this in football terms, left, like, just bleed that play clock down as much as possible, which you can kind of do in basketball, but like the tempo matters so much in basketball to be able to score and stuff like that. But when they've wanted to do something, so far they've been doing it, which is not a thing we could have said last year or the year before that, or I mean even somewhat the year before that as well in the last Kubai Ladin year too. So I am just floored watching this team just been like, oh, every single thing they set their sights on, they can do, and they have additional resources to do those things with how deep this team goes right now.
Oh yeah, very much. And they don't lose a lot with what comes off the bench. I mean,
Danny
one of the best
Carnegie's
players on the team comes off the bench right now,
Right.
And Danny Carnegie now the rookie of the week again in the ACC this week, and she's coming off the bench, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to change because it's
It doesn't
working.
need
Why
to,
mess
yeah.
with it, right?
Fortner loves the hot hand, and she loves the thing that stays working too. Like she's only going to change it if it makes sense to change it. And right now you got our starting forward. If Blackshear's coming off the bench as our 7th player behind Carnegie,
exactly.
it's like this is depth we've not had in a long time. Of just like no, there are 7 starters playing for 5 spots right now,
Right.
which is
And,
wild.
and the great thing about it is at least from the outside, the team seems to have embraced it as well.
Right.
And of course, winning covers up a lot of sins, right? And so it's, but at the same time, this team seems to have embraced it because the 4 freshmen that came in already knew each other, seemed to be already close, and they fit right in with the group that was here. And so they've all kind of embraced it, and they're like, hey, we're having fun, and the chemistry is good. And so, am I starting? Am I coming off the bench? Well, does it matter? They're all playing 20 plus minutes a game, right? So, they're all getting playing time. They're all getting a chance to shine. They're all making the most of the opportunities when they get them. And it's a really fun team to watch. And there are still tickets available for Wednesday afternoon, and there's tickets available for Nebraska. There's tickets available the whole rest of the season, and it's such an attractive schedule this year. Fans should be taking this in and filling up as much of McCamish as we can fill up with basketball fans, really getting into the entertaining style of play this team has.
I know I have no power, but it really is a shame they have the Wednesday afternoon game instead of the Wednesday night game that the guys have this week. If you have the choice,
I would swap those. We'll get to men's basketball later, but I would love to swap those.
I wish we could swap them, but at least they get the later game on Saturday, which is good against Nebraska.
Right.
So the one that matters is later, but yeah, nonetheless, they got like $5 ticket deals out. You can get in the building for cheaper than a Chick-fil-A sandwich right now.
And if you want, Alexander Tharp points, the cheapest AT points you can buy are volleyball, softball, and women's basketball season tickets.
That's right.
Kurt, you're telling people everywhere about my AT fund arbitrage.
Exactly. That's how you do it. If you want to build up your AT points in the least expensive way possible, taking in some high quality women's athletics at Tech that's the way to do it.
And we'll get to softball in the spring. Trust me, we are ready for that one. I want to give Bart Torvik a shout out, and I know I've done that like 3 times so far this season. The fact that this is the year that he added NCAA women's analytics and built that out has me just so locked in on what the team is doing. Every time they play a game, I refresh because I got to know about how all those advanced metrics have shaken up. And I want you guys to guess.
Okay.
Wins above bubble. It's my favorite stat. It compares a team to the average bubble team. You know me, love filling out brackets and things like that. Where do you think Georgia Tech is nationally in wins above bubble, i.e., where do they rank relative to the average bubble team out of all 360 teams?
It's fun because I have this page pulled up, and I
don't
know where it is on this page.
I can at least play here with Kurt.
I can throw out a number. I mean,
go for it.
8.
8 wins above bubble. I mean, that would imply
no 8th overall
ranking,
8th or 8 wins above bubble.
No, 8 wins above bubble.
Okay, Jack.
Okay, if we're doing wins above bubble, the fact we've only played 11 games makes 8 seem a little high.
Well, I assume they normalize it over a whole season, but
good point.
I'm looking at only the season.
I don't know anything
far,
about how they calculate it.
Neither do I.
But I think it would project to about 8 if we extrapolate the current
to the whole season.
Got it. All right.
But so Jack, that's a hint.
In that case, give me like 2.5 right now, I guess, at this point.
It's 2.9, and I should have specified rank because they're 4th in the country. That tells me that even with what they've done so far, like you see a lot of the 11 is your ULMs and Georgia States and things like that. No, that South Dakota State win, that matters. That is a phenomenal mid-major team.
Yes,
Oregon, UNC, Mississippi State, like this is a team that's not just taking care of business, but like it is one that is already having tangible effects on their postseason window, and that's exciting to be talking about and anticipating on December 16th, right? Like
we've played one ACC game. We've played one ACC game.
Exactly.
And you get a week off before another one, or 2 weeks off before the next one.
Right.
So that is
more anticipation.
I love ACC
you know?
scheduling. Yeah.
So.
Just one note on Bartorvik too. Georgia Tech has not posted a game score under 92 the entire year. So that like all-in-one quality team performance metric, they have not looked like not just like mediocre or like not or good. They have looked great the entire season. Per the numbers and their efficiency metrics too. The only I guess that if we're picking nits in what has been a great start to the season, as I'm wont to do, there are two things that stand out to me. One, that efficiency number, the defensive efficiency number versus North Carolina. It's indexed to 100, so 100 is the average team. It's 100 points per 100 possessions. Their defensive efficiency was 109, which is concerning, and their turnover number was a little high as well at 11. Turnover rate was 11.5.
But they still posted a perfect 100 game score. So like,
Oh well,
what can you do? What can you do?
I have a thing to put in here because I was going to ask Kurt this question related to this game. That first half, I think, was one of the better first halves I've ever seen Tech play in women's basketball. Like, I mean, you've watched so much more of this team than I have. Like, at that halftime, where did that sit for you in just terms of just periods of Tech basketball played?
I mean, we scored 50 points on a team that was giving up an average of 50 points a game.
Right.
Yeah.
At halftime, we had already hit the average number of points a game. UConn scored 69 on North Carolina. UConn.
Yeah.
We scored 82. So when we had 50 at halftime and looking at what that team had done, it was hard for me to say, okay, well, what are you telling them to fix at halftime? You're telling them, no, keep on keeping on, right? Don't take the foot off the gas, which we did in that third quarter. We still came out hot in that third quarter. Like I say, it got rougher in the fourth quarter. I think we got a little tired. Whether we relaxed, but we got a little sloppy. That was where a lot of our turnovers happened. I think the second half was maybe called a little tighter than the first half.
I think that's fair too.
Because the number of fouls called in the second half, certainly more. And that's even with North Carolina fouling a bit at the end, right? But, fouls on us, we had like doubled our foul total for the game in the third quarter. So it was, in just the flow of the game or whatever. But that first half is like one of the better first halves this team has, certainly played this season. And one of the better halves of basketball you'd see out of most teams, outside of having Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers or Hannah Hidalgo running around for you, or
right. And that's the next
Juju Watkins, get some of those folks under. But Tony Morgan and Danny Carnegie and Kara Dunn and all them, they're making a case for being in that top tier of players.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny that I mentioned Kara Dunn and Tony Morgan because I'm looking at Bartorvik's career stats at Georgia Tech. Kara Dunn is number 2. Tony Morgan is number 3 if you sort by the big player value metric that has the very long name that I don't actually know what it stands for, but it's they're since 2021. So Bartorvik's stats go back to 2021. It is Lorella Kubai at number 1, Kara Dunn at number 2, and Tony Morgan at number 3. Kayla Blackshear's not super far behind at number 6.
That
so
checks out.
Yeah, you kind of like to have it go back a little further because we've had some great players play at Tech.
Yeah.
Because I certainly would expect to see Megan Harpering in there or oh gosh.
Montgomery?
Alex Montgomery, certainly. I'm trying to think of some of our leading scorers.
Just to fill out the list here as well.
Oh, Ty Marshall,
number 5.
There you go.
That's right. That's
Ty
right,
Marshall and Sydney Wallace. You got to throw some of them in there. Fallon Stokes was a good all-around player back in her day. And so, Keisha Ford and your Carla Munions, Elizabeth Balogun could have been if she stayed. But that's what happens, right? So we've had some pretty good players come through this program. But I think it's one of those things where right now there's just that confluence of really, really good players playing together. When you talk about Dunn and Morgan and Carnegie and the rest of them and what they're doing as a unit, because it is a team game, right?
Yep.
And how they're working together as a unit is just, it's just magic to watch. They just all seem to, even with the freshmen, have that sixth sense of knowing where everyone's going to be on the floor, finding the open player, even when they're making the extra pass, right? There's times where you see teams where they make that extra pass and you're like, oh, why did you do that, right? You lost the opportunity to score, and this team's got a high basketball IQ.
Yeah.
And so when they make the extra pass, it's a good one. And there's that open player. There was what was it? There was a play against Carolina where I think Termise had rebounded a ball and just kind of flipped it. And I think it was to Carnegie, who was kind of running by her for a layup, right? And it was like bang, bang.
So. Yeah.
And I don't know if it was Carnegie or Dunn, but Termise just kind of had as soon as she got the ball, it was like she just flipped it. And
stuff like that happened over and over. Stuff like that happened over and over in that game too. Like, we won the rebounding battle by a lot, which contributed a significant amount to the game, to the win as well. But yeah, I mean, I remember hearing this so often from Nell and from Blanche and Tasha when she was with us at the time, just like how smart our team was these last couple of years. And finally seeing them put that all together has been one of the more, I think, just parts that's given me the most joy watching this team. Is just like, I knew they had this in them. It was just a matter of getting past the hump, having tools around them to also make it happen. I think you could say the transfers the last couple of years to try to help them along in their development were probably good in that sense, but not great for the on-court results when it was all said and done. But it's the work is finally showing what it was supposed to show. And if you tell me this is what this is going to look like, and they could play another year together too, considering we only lose Black's year after this year, there's the potential this team is as higher than I thought. I mean, at least coming into this year, I don't remember what I projected. I don't think I projected even a tournament appearance at this point. But it's like, okay, now that we've seen them do this over repeatedly too, like there is a level of consistency we have not seen from a Tech basketball team in Lord knows how long. The Kubai Latin years were very good, but there was still some up and downness going on with that. There was some injury luck and misfortune happening there too. But still, it's like, holy cow, this is a different level of what we've seen. Granted, one ACC game, more to come, but still,
it is very convenient for our discussion specifically that Bart Torvik goes back to 2021 because it gives you all 5 seasons. There's more seasons of Nell Fortner because I actually don't remember when she started off the top of my head.
2019,
It was before the
2020.
pandemic.
So she had one season, then the pandemic. So
That's right.
So I think it's I think these are listed by
no.
end year.
The pandemic was her first season. So her first season was 2019, 2020, and then the spring of 2020 is when everything got shut down. And we were 20 and 11.
State? They lost to NC State in the conference tournament, but we were all
we
pretty
were out
confident that they'd get a decent seed out of that.
Because we were 20 and 11 coming out of the ACC tournament and had a winning record in conference. And at that point, in general, if you're in the ACC with a winning record, you're very likely in the postseason.
Yeah. Yep.
all that to say, so Bortovic's actually only missing the one season from Nell Fortner's Georgia Tech era. So your T ranks, they're all in one ranking method. 2021, 28th in the nation, 32nd in the nation in 22, 75th in 23, 72nd in 24, and so far in 24, 25, Tech is 19th. So obviously, long way to go. And a road that starts on Wednesday at 2 p.m. versus Rice and continues on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. versus number 24 Nebraska. These are the ends of some home and homes that were last weekend or last season,
Last
excuse
year.
me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, I pointed out this Nebraska game as being very interesting, like not a turning point per se, but just very interesting as far as how the season is going to go. I think, and Jake was giving me crap about this in our document. If Tech beats Nebraska, I think personally the sky is the limit against like any ACC team. I adjusted this to ACC team, but any
That's
ACC
fair.
team that's not named Louisville, Notre Dame, Stanford, or NC State. And Jake, you immediately got on my case for the Stanford pick.
That's just part of my job, man. I got to keep you honest about that.
Who would
I
you
know you
swap? Who would
shield
you
for them,
swap in that spot? Who would you swap
Duke.
in that spot?
I'd
Duke.
put Duke in there. Yeah.
Duke, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Louisville is right now. Louisville is not very good.
Yeah. Agreed.
And it's certainly by Louisville standards.
Yeah, Van Lith plays for
Um,
TCU now, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not ranked.
That's
They're not even
super
getting
weird.
votes. And so Louisville does not themselves. Stanford's in a transition with
Yep.
Tara Vanderveer having retired.
Yep.
They still have
Mhm.
some good players, though they had a really good one transfer out, unfortunately for them. One who's probably going to be a first round draft pick in the WNBA. And so but at the same time, it's still Stanford. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
still a very attractive place to be as a female athlete. And so, whether they end up with what folks consider to be a little bit of a down year in the transition, we'll see when it's all said and done. But so right now you've got some teams that need to find themselves between Louisville and Stanford, but Cal's now nationally ranked.
Yep.
And I don't think, at least those of us on the East Coast were thinking much about the Bears in as far as women's basketball was concerned, though they've been decent, but they're off to a hot start as well. So it's Notre Dame is fantastic. The Miles Hidalgo duo is
Ooh,
every
baby.
bit as potent as Dunn and Morgan, if not more so. And so it's they're going to be hard for everyone. I mean, NC State is still NC State doing what
Mhm.
they're doing. Duke is, they've got a
So
great
good.
season going. So this is. To me, ACC is still the toughest women's basketball conference. And it's a gauntlet to get through day in and day out. And you can look at a team and say, oh, Louisville is struggling right now, but that doesn't mean that come the end of February that they aren't right back in the thick of things.
Right.
Oh, and
This
to
is
your
what
point about Louisville, by the way, they have played the likes of UCLA, Kentucky,
Oh yeah.
Oklahoma, Connecticut, and then an absolute detonation on them by NC State. Like it's been a really rough schedule early going, and 30-point loss to NC State is
Well,
really not going to help your pace early in the season.
and they've traveled around quite a bit. They went to Paris and
Yep.
I forgot they had a game
and
out there. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is
and
it
so
UCLA one in Paris?
yeah, it was the UCLA game was in
Yeah.
Paris, but they've
Yeah.
also done, they've done some neutral site kind of games. They playing UConn. So it's not they're playing a top five in the nation kind of schedule. And they may not have top five in the nation talent right now. But like I say, that doesn't mean that by February that Coach Walls hasn't gotten them cranking, and they'll be very dangerous. throughout the whole season by the time you
Right.
get to the end of it. So,
Yep.
and it's not where you start, it's where you finish, right? So we're Georgia Tech off to a very hot start right now. The question, the game there is to sustain it. There's going to be a loss at some point, maybe two, maybe three. They're going to come, they're going to happen, and the team will have to learn how to absorb them, and from that, learn the lesson, learn how to win, and continue to be tougher as the season goes on. Because if they can, they can make some noise come March.
What I like is that of these tough matchups, so many of them are at home. Duke we have at home, but Notre Dame not at home.
Yeah.
Sucks, but whatever. NC State at home. Florida State. Tanaya
Mhm.
Lotson loves nothing more than to score 30 plus points against us every single time we play her. We have
Yep.
her as the final home game of the season before we go to Cal and Stanford.
Mhm.
Wake Forest is at home. Duke, as I mentioned, Duke is at home. So like some of these really key game, and Virginia Tech's at home, although Kitley's gone. But like still of these important games that can decide how far up the ACC standings we go, a lot of these are at home, which is very fortunate for us come this time of year. We finished on the road at Stanford, which, as you mentioned, transition year. So who knows what that's going to look like in March when that game rolls around at this point. Really no telling. But at the very least, we have a beneficial path towards maybe some wins that on the outset, even now, we may be like, okay, we're actually going to get that. That we definitely could, especially if we start filling up the building, which, Lord willing,
Yeah.
Saturday is going to be. I mean, I mean, my goal now is if we're winning, that we beat the crowd number we got for that UConn game, which was an early season game and only so consequential. Like it was big because UConn was in town, but like if we're talking like, nope, this is a top 15-ish team right now. We got to play Duke. We got to play Florida State. Like we can fill it out. This can be big games. So.
Oh, yeah.
There's some magic to be had this season for sure. I think for sure in McCamish Pavilion. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the number 19 women's volleyball team whose season ended, I think, a couple weeks ago now in Wisconsin. The NCAA tournament has continued. Pitt and Louisville are the remaining ACC teams. They also play each other in a Final Four that is hosted at Louisville's Yum Center. So the ACC teams are on one side of the bracket, the Big Ten teams are on the other side of the bracket, and you get a nice ACC Big Ten showdown in the final at the Yum Center. It should be a pretty raucous crowd. Kurt, just want to talk to you a little bit about the volleyball season this year. How do you feel they performed based on your preseason expectations of the squad?
I think the part of the season they probably want back, if you will, or wish things had gone a little different, was the Florida swing at the end of the season.
Yeah.
To lose both at Florida State and Miami on the road, which are tough places to play. Those are very good teams, and and Miami wasn't Grace Lopez that went off on us this time. I think it was Heredia Cologne had like 30 plus kills on us in that match. And she was scoring from all over the floor. So it was I think if you get those two matches back, right? And you're looking at a 23-8 final and maybe a 14-6 ACC mark. Maybe you feel, because some folks like, oh, this was disappointing in some fashion, and like, well, if you want anything to be disappointed about, that's maybe the Florida swing. But in general, I'm not sure this team, we knew going into it how well they would perform, right? They were having to replace a setter. They were replacing a very good libero, and retooling a few things here and there. And then they ended up with some key injuries with Suarez breaking fingers against Florida early in the season, and then not really returning until that Florida swing at the very end of the season. We had like a month without Larissa Menges. and it was one of those things to where Manjez's injury, right, was one of those places where other than Suarez, the team was getting everybody back healthy, and things looked like they were going to go pretty well. And then suddenly, she injures her ankle in practice, and that's that for a month. And so, but what that did do is it gave us a look at Logan Wiley that maybe we would or would not have gotten. And so folks got to see how good she is. We got to see Liz Mogridge play right side, and give, old folks like me some Laura Kuhn vibes of a middle moving over to the right side and making very good things happen, while she was there. And so, I think this team performed really well this year in a conference that got much tougher with the addition of the 3 new schools. And so you had, and then the other part of it as well is with the 3 new schools, the conference made a conscious decision to have the last week of the season be what were projected to be the top teams in the conference playing each other.
Yep.
And so our home and homes were Stanford, right, and Pitt, and
so generous,
and
so
Clemson,
generous with the ACC,
right?
So generous,
right. But Louisville had the same thing. They had Pitt and Stanford as their home and homes, and so it was. So you ended up at the end of the season with the top teams in the conference playing each other, which again could be a win, could be a loss, and after that Florida swing, and then for them to play that many 5-set matches in a row like they did at the end of the season, that shows you that they went down swinging. And so it was, this team had the right amount of fight in it. They, as usual, I think may have played a little above their talent. Coach Collier and her staff get the most out of their players. We can start, throwing name after name over the last several years of players that have grown and gotten visibly better. You can look at Tam Otene and her growth since she came over from Illinois State. You get this mid-major kid who's, she's okay and she does all right. And was playing the right side, getting some balls over there and being fairly successful to being one of the top outside hitters in the conference by the time it was all said and done. And so we've seen them develop middles. We've seen them develop the players, and this is, if you're able to do advertising, if you will, for this program, that to me is a big deal. The fact that the player, you're not only coming to Georgia Tech and getting to play high level volleyball night in and night out, you're going to get better as a player because this coaching staff is going to coach you up. They're going to make you better. Between Nell and between Claudio and the Olympic gold medals that they can kind of break out and show recruits that come in and say, hey, we've been doing this at the highest levels. It's got to be an attractive proposition for the athletes. And so we'll see how the program shakes out next year. This feels like a turn the page kind of a season with 8 players moving on. But it's a matter of, will she reload? She's done it in the past. I believe she'll do it again. They had players that we never saw this season. We don't know how good or bad they are, but they were all
right.
They were there, they were practicing, they were helping make the team better, and it'll be interesting to see, what opportunities they get going forward in addition to the new players coming in. We've got a really good outside hitter recruit coming in. We've got a pretty good middle recruit coming in, right? We've got, we've got a local setter who's a, perennial state championship setter here in the state of Georgia playing high level club volleyball successfully. So it's I think there's we'll be younger next year, modulo transfer portal things, but I think the future looks good. I don't call it a disappointing season, but at the same time, there's things you look at and go, oh, it would have been a little nicer if we'd gotten that back. But if you roll it back,
too much points against Stanford.
Yeah, but 7 straight postseasons, 5 straight NCAA appearances. These are things that have never happened.
Right.
Talk about 11-0 and the unprecedented things in women's basketball. These kinds of things, they're still making history in the volleyball program. And I assume Coach Collier will be back next year. And as soon as that season starts, she becomes the longest tenured volleyball coach in Georgia Tech history. So it's and she's on her way to, within the next couple seasons being, taking over that wins mark from Shelton Collier, and being the winningest volleyball coach in Georgia Tech history. And I hope that's something that's attractive to her. And she's excited about, what kind of legacy she's building at Georgia Tech, and that us as fans and the athletic association, values all of that properly and make sure that that success continues.
And that Shelton record came in a completely different ACC landscape too. I mean, I figured that with Stanford and SMU coming in that they'd be good, but I mean this was just an incredible season top to bottom for the league. Some great crowds we were seeing, some great games. I mean it was remarkable, and the thing that and you'd be a great person to bounce this off of, that just kind of clicked in the back of my head is you keyed in on the 8 departures that we'll see this year, and I've been reflecting on how 2016 felt. That was my first season as a Georgia Tech fan, and it felt like everyone was gone off that team, off of the team, and they got snubbed. They did get snubbed. I stand by that.
Yes, they did.
But
I'm with you there. That was a travesty.
But in terms of one, there's transfer portal and things like that now, but in terms of the incoming talent, like the brand and the record and the closet of achievements that the staff can point to, and the notoriety that Georgia Tech has gained from being so successful for 5 years, feels like it's a completely different world from oh gosh, 2016, this is the dance, we didn't make it, what next? There's not even a WNI or a WVI,
right?
But the I forget what the acronym is.
NIVC.
NIVC.
It's been too long since we went. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, and that team deserved postseason, and it was just one of those things to where it's like, okay, for whatever reason, I don't know if they thought our non-conference wasn't strong enough, but we were 15-5 in the ACC. Come on, right? What more could we have done? But yeah, it was disappointing that class didn't get to experience the NCAA tournament, because they certainly earned it. But it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it. And now that, and she built it back up. It took a season to kind of get things back going again. But since then, like I say, 7 straight postseasons. You got, except for the COVID year, because we only played 19 matches. We've won 20 every season from 2019 on. Double-digit ACC wins throughout that entire stretch. And now, and like I say, just sort of you come into this season with the high hopes, and then the way that things that they have no control over, it's suddenly you've picked up the Pac-12 champion in Stanford, and the American Conference champion in Southern Methodist, and Cal, which is still a Pac-12 team that has played high level. So you didn't get anyone easy thrown into the conference as far as volleyball was concerned, and the same thing's true of women's basketball as well. So it was a much tougher conference, and they skewed the schedule so that Tech, with respect to Georgia Tech, had us playing at the top of the conference at the end of the season.
And I totally believe in their ability to reload and recruit to that success in a way that maybe I didn't know enough to know one way or the other in 2016, let alone, kind of where the reputation was at the time. So
I think to that point, I think that we kind of talked about this last week. Kurt, what is next for this program? Where do you think they should focus when Coach Collier comes in the, I guess, in the winter and the spring and takes a look at this roster. What gaps do you see that they need to fill heading into 2025?
May I suggest outside hitter?
Yeah, they've lost both their starting outsides, so they're certainly going to have to look at filling that. Um, I think Mimi Mambu, who's the outside hitter from Chantilly, Virginia, she touches 10'6", right? And so, yeah. And so she gets off the floor and, she's in the
You have no
national.
idea how much you're blowing our minds right now. We've been begging for height
Yeah.
for so long.
Podcasting is a visual medium, so listeners did not see any of this, but the way that all three of our faces lit up at the 10'6" is an iconic moment. Truly.
So
Wanna play hoops,
I'll
too?
give you
Keep going,
I'll
keep
give
going,
you
keep
an
going.
old, an old story so Georgia Tech, we had an outside hitter named Talisa Kellogg, daughter of Clark Kellogg, Clark Kellogg.
Yep.
And when she came and played, after her first season, she comes in and she's wearing goggles from that point forward, and you're like, oh, she needs, she wears glasses. Oh, okay, not a big deal. Decided she needing them to play. And it turned out that no, she needed the goggles because she jumped so high she was getting poked in the eye by the blockers from the other side of the net.
Oh,
my
man.
God.
Well,
And so
I
she
believe
needed
it.
eye protection because she jumped so high. And so, I don't know that Mimi does the same thing, but that's the thing that I know coaches look for when they're out recruiting, is when you go to these convention center volleyball events where you've got 100 courts, from one end of the convention center to the other, and the coaches will stand at one end of it just looking across the sea of courts, and what they're looking for is to see the heads that pop up.
Yep.
Right. And as they see the heads pop up, they're like, okay, I gotta go with that one. I'm gonna go see this one and that one, and that kind of, and so Mimi is one of the heads that pops up, and I think I don't get into the recruiting stars. I think I thought someone somewhere said she was a 4-star player.
I'll take
So
it.
so yes, you've got at least her on the outside as a freshman coming in. They've got a middle coming in, Ada Owagu out of San Antonio, Texas, and Texas produces usually some really good volleyball players. The setter, Abigail Lee, or Abby Lee, out of Alpharetta High School. I think she also spent a couple years at Walton. Both of those high school programs are perennial state champions. She's been at, playing at A5, the big club here locally. And she's 6'1". So, we
That
get
works.
a 6'1"
works.
setter on the team, right? And if
For
she's on the
yeah.
team with Suarez next year, got a 5'10", 6'1", even if we're going 6'2", but now you've got a 6'1" setter who can maybe play the front row when you need a setter who can go 6 rotations, right?
Right. Yeah.
We signed a 6-foot setter out of Budapest, Hungary, right? And then I think the player we just signed from Italy is an outside hitter.
Yeah, Despania. Yeah. Outside hitter.
Despania, she's the daughter of like one of the stars of volleyball out of Cuba.
Okay.
And who was known for his leaping ability.
We like that.
And he's been, if you look him up, it's kind of funny because they say, his nickname was El Diablo, and that all came from, all came from his leaping ability. And so I don't know if we end up with La Diabla for Georgia Tech here this
I'll
season or
take
not,
it.
but
I love that nickname. I want to write that as much as possible.
yeah, there you go. But so we'll see. Right. And she's in the Italian national team program. So there's 2 freshmen outside hitters. If they go looking around the transfer portal and find an outside hitter that they think fits and is going to contribute immediately, I wouldn't surprise me, because they've got room to bring in a couple players out of the portal if they feel like they really need to. So yeah, so outside hitter immediately is probably the biggest need. And so, they've got some depth in the middle. Mira McCool didn't play. I didn't see her play in high school. She's out of Birmingham, so no idea, what she's going to bring. But the middles come back. Main Jez will be healthy. We've got Casas, the Argentinian right side hitter. Whether she can hit the left side as well, it's how Otane worked, right? Came here, was right side hitter first, and ended up playing both pins essentially, as coach has no problem telling her outside hitters, you're playing right side and left side, just wherever you are in the rotation, that's where you're going to hit. And that makes moving the players around after serve receive easier as well. But it's so I think they've addressed that. I think they've addressed they're going to have to replace a setter, and so they've done that. And so I think they've addressed some of their immediate needs, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them try to pick up, something out of the portal, but only if they feel like that the players are going to be immediately useful to the team, and not, unless they tell that player out of the portal, you're coming here to be a practice player or to be depth and things like that.
I think to your point though, like even the players existing on the roster, like McCool is 6'3", as far as 5'11". Casa 6'3" as well. Like between who is on the bench and who's coming in, as you're describing, people that can touch the moon. The height, I think a big problem for us has been dealing with height from good teams like Tennessee. I know that was a thing we had to battle against in that game.
You can't teach tall, Jack.
I know
we can't teach tall.
I think we said that to each other 8 times walking back from the Celebration Bowl.
Yeah,
and it's like solving. I know it's like you can't solve this problem without just getting them to say yes, pretty much. But I think this is one of the big things that'll be huge for us next year in the reloading ability versus the rebuilding ability. It's just like at least to have some of those intangibles already set in stone that can get you competitive in the overwhelming majority of our conference games, which all of them are going to be probably pretty competitive too, because the ACC is freaking awesome at volleyball right now. And our record is no indictment, and our losses are no indictment of how necessarily we didn't get worse. We got worse. This year's team was better than last year's team, but not necessarily how much worse we played, but just how much better the overall talent we had to face and got across the board. So that's all good news. I'm very happy you shared that. Because I think
the thing she'll be looking at for all of these players is just quality serve receive. The times I think where we struggled, particularly late in the season, our serve receive kind of left us a little bit, or didn't help us. If you will. And so I think we'll look and see. It'll be interesting to see what these new players bring in that respect as well.
Yeah, no, Velez was getting targeted. Like you look at her dig counts, like teams were just targeting her over and over and over again because they knew like she's just 5'2". You can get around her. There's only so much she probably was going to do, which is the same thing that happened.
5'4". 5'4". Give it the other 2 inches.
Oh, you're right. I'm 5'2". That's right. Sorry. But like it was the same story we had with Pimentel last year as well. It's just like, okay, they know they can attack her and get the best shot at getting some good results off of serve receive. So, and she got better too. Velez's dig numbers kept going up throughout the year, and she got better and better and better with that as well, which was to your point of the development. It happens in season. It happens in the off season. This team only finds ways to get better as they grow.
Yep.
So
exactly.
We'll see him again in action soon enough. Spring games will be here before you know it.
I know.
Yeah. Volleyball will sneak up on us quick. Well, Kurt, thank you for your time today. Anything to plug? Social media, projects, radio? Where can the people find you?
I'm still around on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days at Kurt in Atlanta. Trying to make sure I can clear the deck this week to join Richard on Wednesday afternoon against Rice. It's looking good so far, but you never know. But certainly after, in the Nebraska game after that, and as the home games go on in the year, he and I have been working together a long time, and it's always fun when the not just the games, but for the two of us as friends to get together and see each other in person. And the great thing about it, and I've said this a lot with these teams, is that because people don't always get to meet these players, and particularly our female athletes at Tech are all just crazy smart.
Yep.
And just are just amazing young women, it's just as they are, not just as athletes, but just as people. And so, when you talk about high IQs and things like that, sometimes it's fun for coaches because, fun in a bad way, because they're thinking so much. The coach, they sort of ask, well, why does this have to be this way and stuff like that. Sometimes coaches are like, just go do it, and but they're all crazy smart and all great. But Kurt in Atlanta, hopefully, as much as Richard will let me be around, and then and everything else, right? It's all year to years. So they'll have me back again with volleyball next year. I'll be back again with volleyball until at some point someone's going to tell me to go away, and that'll be sad. But Father Time is undefeated, so
we will throw a
but that's where you
fit.
can find me, and then I'm always happy to hang out with y'all whenever you want me.
We appreciate it, and hopefully Father Time stays away for a long, long time. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to listening to you on the radio for many, many years to come.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
See you, Kurt. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
We will take a short break and be back to talk about swim and dive, football. Stick around. Back soon.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As ever, I'm here to give you our ad read. Section 103 is the exclusive advertiser on From the Rumble Seats, Science of the Southland podcast, as you, I'm sure, know. And they have big news. By the time this comes out, they'll have announced hats. That is new. That is exciting. That is different. Go check them out. Section103.com is the best place to find them. You can find them over on the Bird app. Well, I guess it's just the X app now, but that's at Section 103 there. You can use code FTRS, 10% off. Why wouldn't you? $80 is the minimum for free shipping. But between that and hat news and all the great apparel they have over there that isn't going anywhere anytime soon, feel free to check them out and let them know that we're the ones that sent you. Code FTRS for 10% off. Gents, let's talk some swimming.
Let's talk some swimming. Georgia Tech had many swimmers, or at least more than I expected, at the short course World Championships this past week. Gentlemen, where do we want to start with this?
I'll start with that. I was watching just because I didn't realize it was happening, and thankfully I am one of the few Americans that has Peacock and could actually watch this event while I was working from home. And then I was like, "Oh, Gretchen Walsh just swam. This is cool. I'll watch this." And then they go to the 100-meter final, and I see both Berke Saka and Kyle Pamputis swimming in the A final in the final of the event. I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And Pamputis got third, and Berke got seventh, which was super cool to see an active Tech swimmer make the final of a World Championship event. And Pamputis, a recent grad of ours from Brazil, get there too, which is super cool.
You mentioned Walsh, and I think there was some commentary about like her breaking records and stuff.
She broke like 10. She broke like 10 of them.
No, duh. It's short course meters. Who races short course meters?
Oh, it was meters? It wasn't yards? I thought it was.
That's what I thought.
So broken.
I thought it was short course meters.
It was meters. You're right. It was meters. Yep. This explains so many things. Okay.
Where
that is
was
the
this
most
posted,
country
by the
club
way?
of distances, and I stand by it because you get a person who's building a new pool at some summer pool where they don't use it for that many competitions, and they're like, well, we'll get a little more pool out of it. And it's like, no, you go yards short course or you go meters long course.
Yep.
No. It's almost as insane as long course yards, but not quite.
This explains why
I was
have
a long course yards one. I think my brain is just gonna melt.
I know this explains why some of the times are weird. Actually, to your question, it was in Budapest, Hungary. The United States destroyed everybody at this event. Like when you have the Walsh sisters and Kate Douglas and Katie Burkhoff and our guy, it was donezo from the beginning.
That just sounds like UVA destroyed everyone.
It's the ACC just won out, and some guy and who was it? Carlos Calmarti swam in one of the events. There's another swimmer guy who I've watched in person at Tech what set some records too. I'm
There's
forgetting
a
them all.
bunch. There's like Carson Foster is on a world record team here. Oh man, like Jack Alexi, Michael Andrew, but like every single one of these is like
It was all.
U.S. world record, meet record, American record,
It
world
was
record.
it was like that, and in semis too
It's
for our
nuts.
ladies who were basically the entirety of our current Olympic team. I know. Was it Rikova or was it no? It was Ayrton did qualify for the meet. But I know she did not swim the long free. She showed up as a DNS, but we did have at least a female qualifier in this event as well, or this meet as well.
Fascinating. Looking through these results is so much fun if you feel like doing American exceptionalism about a sporting event because there's so many flags, so many
Yeah.
U.S. flags up and down the board here. But it's not, like you said, it's nice to see some tech representation at a world championship event. Not too often do we get to see
Yeah.
those.
Ayrton did also swim the 400 and the 800, but she did not qualify for finals in those events.
Womp womp.
But otherwise,
Let's.
3 tech swimmers at the World Championships. That's better than normal, including an active swimmer at the championships.
Even if
We
it's a
take
weird
those.
distance.
Yes.
Again, we take those.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
what I'll say.
We do indeed. Let's talk a little football, shall we? We talked last week about the Birmingham Bowl. I'm going to keep messing that up because soccer brain,
I think we
soccer
just
brain
call
is
it
terminal.
I think we just go Birmingham just as our stick. We're just the Birmingham Bowl guys. That's just what we do.
We're gonna get an email or something about that, I swear. But more importantly, this week ahead of the Birmingham Bowl, a couple of transfer portal announcements, or like lack of transfer portal announcements, especially with Haynes King, Aaron Philo, Kyle Eford, and Rodney Shelley. All 4 of them are staying at Georgia Tech for 2025, so that's huge, especially for Haynes King and Aaron Philo, and also Kyle Efford, who's a monster in the run defense game as well. Eric Singleton, I think we discussed, was in the portal last week. I think someone had him as the top recruit in the portal, or at
Yeah,
least
he's
the
up
top
there.
wide receiver. I saw number 1 next to his name, and I didn't really look at it too much further. I don't know if
I
either
know
of you did.
he's got I think he is. Like I know he's gotten brought up on Solid Verbal and other big time national pods as well. So it's the fact his name is out there is a big deal right now. So
Fascinating. I think Auburn and Texas were the logos that I saw in the graphic next
Yep.
to his name.
Yep.
But you never know. Things could change. We'll see how that works out. Jack, you had a dream scenario here. I think this
Mhm.
was you that put it in here
Mhm.
about Justice Haynes
See
arriving at Georgia Tech.
that last name. Now here's the thing: we don't know if he's even going to visit. Hopefully he does, but he's in the portal. He's next door. We know Jamal Haynes is here. We know Haynes King is here. I put this on Twitter, but if we could turn our law firm of Haynes and Haynes to Haynes and Haynes, I mean, the Section 103 shirts are going to fly off the shelves like no other shirt that Stevens
If
ever
you
put
get
up.
one more, you could do like the and shirt
Yep,
thing where
yep,
you do Haynes
Haynes
and
and
Haynes and
Haynes
Haynes
and
and
Haynes and
Haynes.
Haynes.
yes, it would
Yeah.
be
It
so
could be a
good.
good bit.
I mean,
Could be
it's
really, really good
and the
bit.
thing is, a second run. I mean, we've got some good running backs, but if you could tell me that Jamal Haynes and Justice Haynes, I mean that's you're talking. I mean, Justice wasn't a big time. I mean, to be clear, he's from Alabama. He's the running back room at Alabama is notoriously amazing all the time. So it's not. This is a dude who would definitely improve the stature of our run game without a doubt. Um, it would be it would be so dynamic, and we're set up right now. I mean, the fact we know that we're going to get our quarterbacks back next year, um, which was already one of the best in the country, and it's going to stay one of the best in the country next year. With Graham Knowles for now still there as well, and Grady Adamson coming in on recruiting. Like this offense, just the floor of it is so high. It's as high as it's basically been since Calvin. Um, that it becomes attractive for guys who want to win football games. And yes, I said that Georgia Tech is going to continue winning football games next year, barring unforeseen injuries and stuff like that. So it's so good. This is a dream, as you mentioned. This is a dream scenario. We don't need to get Justice Haynes to become an elite team. It would be fantastic if we got Justice Haynes, just for the fun of it. Nonetheless, I'll mention a couple of portal things while we're at it. We've had again, who the hell knows who we're gonna get? This is the Wild West still when it comes to the transfer portal.
Also, by the way, this is all happening before bowls have started. Like Army
Right.
Navy was 2 days ago,
Army Navy was 2 days
and
ago.
there's still a whole college football playoff. Not that I care about the playoff, but like there's still a whole college football playoff to be played.
We went
12 teams worth.
we went to a
So
bowl game and players got announced after that bowl game too. Like Penn State's quarterback went, backup quarterback went in the portal, and they have a playoff game coming up. Like he might have been needing to come in if Drew Aller got hurt, and he's had this weird. The calendar's weird, basically. That's what it comes down to. But transfer wise, we have gotten Deborah Gatling from South Carolina, who's a wide receiver. He's still got 4 years left. He committed today. We got Kelvin Hill coming in from UAB. He's got 3 years left to go. He's a cornerback, and then Daquan White from Eastern Michigan, also a cornerback. He's got 2 years left. So many guys. If you look on Twitter, so many guys are supposed to come visit in the next coming weeks. I'm not going to bother reading off all those names because there's so many names and guys I haven't even heard of yet. But for the most part, we're still waiting to see where Eric Singleton lands. I do not expect him to come back. In theory, he can, I think, but that's probably not happening. And then Pyron's
it's all
out
just a spreadsheet, dude. You can just remove your name from the spreadsheet. It's just like one key press.
It's something like that, yeah. Zach Pyron's now out at Minnesota. We've covered that. Christian Leary's going to be at Western Michigan. We hope Leo Blackburn's going to land somewhere soon because we know that man he can have a great career if he lands in a good spot. Tay Seymour has left. He's at Auburn now. So it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out. I think in general we should get better through the portal because Brent Key has been very, very active in this department. It will not be. I don't think this will be a step down for us by any stretch of the imagination, especially with the offensive floor we have. And Haynes King is going to play the Birmingham Bowl too. We got our leg up, and we're going to have a very healthy Haynes King come 9 days from now as we're recording to hopefully pull out another bowl win.
It'd be really nice to end the season with another bowl win as well. Like we said, Birmingham Bowl in, you said 9 days? It's like, I guess
11. Sorry, 11.
tomorrow.
11. Sorry, 11. I math is hard.
Yeah.
I did Excel at Tech. I didn't do actual math.
Birmingham Bowl, 27th of December. Important note, by the way, Tech's ticket requests were totaled 3 times the allotment allowed or given by the organizers in Birmingham, which is pretty rad. Not gonna lie, that's pretty cool to see. And obviously that I think that tweet / Instagram post / social media blast situation was like 4 days ago. So it is almost certainly increased. So expect a lot of white and gold, I guess alongside gold and black for
Black,
Vanderbilt.
white.
Anyway, Birmingham Bowl on the 27th. Keep an eye out for that. And then, 8-5. Pretty successful year. All considered. So look forward to that.
Let's move this along to the miscellaneous. I'm just going to plug a recent episode from ACC Baseball, etc. It's D1 Baseball's ACC podcast. If you don't listen, it's the best place to find out what's going on in the conference. They do a great job. It's a couple of ACC Network D1 Baseball type or ACC Network Extra D1 Baseball type fellows, Danny and Darren. But akin to the resource I have in Joey and Mike over at the basketball conference for football, I would say ACC baseball, etc., is that dose of ACC baseball. Anyways, recent fall ball updates came in their most recent episode, maybe 2 ago, for Georgia Tech. I'm not going to spoil everything of the episode because I think you really should listen and give them a shot over there. Again, ACC baseball, etc. But about 20 minutes on Tech, stuff that we maybe have talked about on this here podcast before, but also interesting to hear
Nice.
the perspective of knowledgeable outsiders. I mean, they're very knowledgeable. D1 Baseball knows their stuff, and the guys who cover us on the ACC Network Extra are nothing but great. But hearing that from other folks on kind of where they think the program's at and what they've seen, and maybe a little bit of prognostication for next year's, it's good stuff. But yeah, go and check them out.
Awesome.
Baseball season's gonna be here before we know it. So
I know.
Softball season before it too.
Oh, that's right.
Like once January gets here, it's our peak. It's our season. We got to start getting the arms warm, getting the bats warm. It's gonna be here.
Headline: Akshay blows UCL.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get Tommy John. That's gonna stink. Uh, I think that about wraps it up. The last thing that I want to mention is fall graduation. That was this past weekend. 29 student athletes graduated alongside tech students this past weekend. So congrats to them all. Congrats. I'm gonna stick with that
Ah,
one. Um,
you're very funny.
Gonna let that one slide. But yes, the full list is on ramblinrec.com if you're interested. But yes, congrats to all of those athletes for getting out. Some of them for the second time. A lot of master's degrees in there. So that's especially from the football team. So that's really cool
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
to see. Mr. Grant, history, trivia.
Yes, we all know that this is women's basketball's winningest season, start to a season ever. Of course, the next previous one was Jim Culpepper's 1977-78 team against some really bizarre schools. But do you guys know what the second best start to a season for
Oh
women's basketball ever was?
man, I should
A
look this
10
up.
and 1, probably.
No, it's most wins to start a season. How's that?
Oh, most wins this
Most was the
season.
start of the season. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something in that same era.
Yeah, it
I
would
guess it,
be.
I guess it depends on when we play Georgia, as Kurt mentioned. It's just like
Yeah, it would
always the
be.
roadblock. So, and of course, I don't have it memorized in my head what was the latest we played Georgia in a given season. Uh, oh boy.
George is always like, I mean, to his point, like George is always that like right the last non-con game before ACC
Right.
play. It's just been moved up the last couple years,
That's
just
right.
because the
That's
way
right.
that the ACC has wanted to schedule.
That's right. Man,
Um,
I really wish I had any semblance of a guess that was based on any evidence that I knew in my head. So I'll just throw the random year of 1990 because that was a good year for tech sports.
It's a good way to go about your guessing, actually.
I'm
All right,
gonna
good.
say 10 and 0 in what, like 1978?
They went 10 and 0 in 77, and then
Close
they
enough.
went 8 and 0. Well, that was the best all-time record, which I just said 2 minutes ago, so you don't get any credit for that.
Boo!
Second
Partial.
second best
Boo you, boo
all-time,
you.
1986-87. Bernadette
Ah,
McGlade's team started 8 and 0. The
ah.
significance of this team, and
Huh?
and also of note, it was matched by Argus Baronato in 95, 96. But the significance of the 1986-87 team is that was Georgia Tech's eighth year in the ACC. Do you know what distinction in conference play they achieved for the first time in 1986-87, their eighth year in the league?
Dare I say finishing eighth or above in the
Well, there were
I
ACC?
only
feel like this is
there were
gonna
only
be
eight
like
teams in
a
the conference,
Oh, okay. Whoops,
so
whoops, whoops.
I feel like this is gonna be a first win in the ACC situation.
not first win in the ACC. They did go winless in one of those seasons, but it in fact was their first time winning more than two ACC games in the
Oh my
season.
God.
Yes, they went 5-10 in ACC play that year
Oh man.
for a .333
Okay.
win percentage, which relays me to our next point. I'll give you half credit if you can guess the first year that they went 500 in ACC play. Do you
Oh
know the
boy.
first year they went better than 500 in ACC play?
I do not, but it was
I'm gonna throw
probably
1992 out there.
Well, you're going to be horribly wrong, but they did go 8 and 9 for a 471 record if you include tournament play. So that was their best record to that point, but they were not quite over 500. So good job on your wild stab in the dark because it was closer to being right than I think I ever would have guessed you would have been.
I mean, at this point, I feel like anything after the year 2000 is the correct answer at this point. So, can I guess everything up after 2000?
So you'd be right. So I'll give you half of the half point and half of the full point for a three-quarters of a point. They went
Yay!
9 and 9 in 2002, 2003.
Okay.
And then they went 8 and 8 in 07, 08. Per my records, these could be me missing a postseason play game in here or something of that nature. But all that to say, yeah, 10 and 6 in 06, 07. But that being said, they did from there rattle off six straight seasons of 500 or better in ACC play, and they're up to nine winning seasons in ACC play. So good
Yeah.
job. We're on the right track. but compared to the pre 2006 years. So I just thought that kind of blew my mind because I've been spoiled by the
We really have
past
been.
20 years of relatively competent Georgia Tech women's basketball. So,
Yeah, I think once you cross the millennium mark, to your point, it's sorted. It's very sorted.
it was bleak, but they were fighting an uphill battle. So more power to them, having to
checks
play
out.
with two hands behind their back. So
I have one bit of breaking news, and then we can finish. Clemson
All right.
has received a transfer portal commitment.
Oh,
Yes,
who?
Dabo's
Sickos
Dabo's finally crossed the river into the transfer portal world.
Does the existence of Daybo imply the existence of Nightbo?
Oh God!
Is this like a Dayman Nightman situation?
That
End the
was what I was
podcast.
thinking
End
of,
the
yeah.
podcast. I'm done. I'm done.
Oh,
You know what?
Dabble
You
learned
know where
how
to
to
find us.
portal.
I do this every week from therumbleseat.com, from therumbleseat@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. Thanks again to Kurt for hopping on. It was great to have him as always. You can find us on Blue Sky. After his blog, I'm at Jake Grant 98 on Blue Sky. I think Jack is on there, and Twitter. Hats. I'm plugging hats. Go buy hats from Section 103. Section103.com. 10% off with code FTRS. Free shipping over $80. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube app from the Rumble Seat, and podcast wherever podcasts are distributed. Good night. Good luck. Go Jackets. Bye hats.